Hi, and welcome back to Mr. Raymond's Social Studies Academy, where today we will begin to look at the Age of Jackson. In this first part, we're going to learn about the events leading up to the Age of Jackson in an incredibly transformative era in American history. Previously, we talked about the start of political parties and different visions for the country, with the debates of Thomas Jefferson and Alexander Hamilton, those favoring a strong national government and those who supported governing at the state level. We covered how political bickering continued during the War of 1812 and the rise of a national hero in the form of Andrew Jackson, as well as how the Federalist Party came out of this war as seeming unpatriotic, leading to their downfall. We also learned how America emerged as a global superpower, and we're going to look at that again in some upcoming lessons, issuing a warning to European powers to stay out of the Americas with the Monroe Doctrine. So check out those videos if you haven't already. All of these events are going to lead up to a more powerful and ever-expanding America and to the Age of Jackson, which is where we will pick up today. So, what do you need to know? Well, for most U.S. history classes, you're going to have to explain how industrial and technological developments would change the landscape of America, as well as the effects and the impacts of Western expansion, all of which are going to lead to the challenges faced by future administrations such as Andrew Jackson. And just a reminder, teachers at this PowerPoint with a wide variety of resources are available at Teachers Pay Teachers. Just click the link in the notes below this video or search for Mr. Raymond's Social Studies Academy at Teachers Pay Teachers. So, in addition to Western expansion, some of the major themes we are going to cover in our lessons on the Age of Jackson include the rise of what is known as sectionalism, a movement towards political parties more in line with what we are used to today, the expansion of participation in election known as Jacksonian democracy, and the increasing rise in the power of the presidency. But today we're going to focus more on the causes of sectionalism, including the beginnings of westward expansion. Our lesson today, despite being part one of the Age of Jackson, is going to be on events before Jackson's presidency, with what's known as the era of good feelings, the expanding and developing of the United States, and the roots of sectionalism. After the War of 1812, a new sense of nationalism united the country. With the death of the Federalist Party and the end of political bickering, a Boston newspaper called this time the quote-unquote era of good feelings. James Monroe, who became president after James Madison, led a Democratic-Republican-controlled Congress, and again, they often call themselves the Republicans, but this was a different party than the Republicans we know today. This one-party-led government knew that the weaknesses of the central government during the War of 1812 demonstrated to most politicians that the weak national government could not meet the needs of the nation. The era of good feelings is associated with the presidency of James Monroe, and despite a growing economy and global prominence, this era would not last that long. To understand why, we have to look at how America was changing. By the time of the era of good feelings, America was a rapidly developing country. During colonial times, most Americans lived on farms, building their own goods such as clothing, furniture, and household items. By the mid-1700s in Great Britain, entrepreneurs began building machines along rivers using water power and creating factories called mills. The Industrial Revolution reached the U.S. around 1800, first taking hold in New England. Because of their poor soil and growing season, New Englanders were eager to embrace these new industries. With their numerous rivers and ports, these new factories began to thrive, luring many Northerners from farms to work in these factories for wages. The Industrial Revolution was fueled by what is called capitalism, in which individuals control the economy, not governments. In capitalism, growth exists in what we call the private sector, not the public one. And this was a change from our earlier discussions of mercantilism, in which nations and governments controlled the economy. New technologies drove the Industrial Revolution. New inventions such as the spinning jenny and the power loom wove thread into cloth. Governments did play a role in capitalism in protecting inventors by issuing patents. In 1793, Eli Whitney invented the cotton gin. This was a new machine that picked seeds from cotton. It significantly expanded the production, and unfortunately, the need for more slave labor to pick more cotton. The demand for slave labor exploded. Between 1790 and 1810, the number of enslaved Africans in America grew from around 700,000 to 1.2 million. As demand for cotton increased, farmers in the South began moving west in search of new fertile land. Meanwhile, new immigrants in the North began moving west as well in search of their own farmlands. In New England, a man named Francis Cabot Lowell created a textile mill or a factory to turn this cotton into cloth. His venture helped spur the rise of factories in New England and created the seeds of sectionalism, which was the social, political, and economic differences between the North and South. The rise of industrialization created an exodus to cities as manufacturing hubs, especially in the North, for those looking to escape the family farm and again to earn wages. Meanwhile, as settlers moved west, they had difficulty getting their products back east. As early as the 1770s, explorer Daniel Boone helped establish a national road through the Appalachian Mountains, known as the Cumberland Gap, soon to become the National Road. Most traders sent their goods via rivers, where downstream travel was easy, but returning back up the river was a problem. Although the use of steam as a new form of power had been used for about 20 years, in 1802, Robert Fulton built a steamship with a powerful engine. Fulton's financial backer, a man named Robert Livingston, wanted steam travel to carry cargo and passengers up the Hudson River. Fulton's ship, the Clermont, made the journey in 32 hours from New York City to Albany, a trip that normally would have taken 4 days. Steamship travel dramatically changed shipping in America, as well as the geographical landscape. Cities along the Mississippi River and its tributaries exploded. However, steamship travel was limited to rivers. In 1825, led by the efforts of New York Governor DeWitt Clinton, construction began of the Erie Canal. When finished, this 363-mile canal connected the Great Lakes and New York City to the Atlantic, dropping the cost of shipping from around $100 per ton to $10. The construction of canals exploded in America, and by 1850, the country developed 3,600 miles of canals, allowing more settlers to move west, even settling farther away from rivers and natural waterways. Henry Clay, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, proposed a new program to help the nation grow known as the American System. Clay called for higher tariffs and internal improvements, including the building of roads and canals and bridges. However, many of his ideas would not make it through Congress. Another thing the Republicans in Congress did was to bring back the Bank of the United States, which had been put in place by Alexander Hamilton but had expired. It was called the Second Bank of the United States and would lead to further political tensions, especially when Andrew Jackson took office. With the embargoes lifted and trade relations normalized after the War of 1812, American manufacturers faced stiff competition from British firms. American business leaders called for tariffs, or taxes on imports, to compete with British goods. The Tariff of 1816, rather than a tax to support the government, was passed to protect American manufacturers. This practice is called protectionism. While the North, with its many industries, applauded the measures, Southerners found European countries putting tariffs on their agricultural goods and saw the prices of finished goods rise. Regional tensions rose over the tariff. These strains gave rise to the concept of sectionalism. Again, this is the differences in goals and interests in the different parts of the country, the North, the South, and increasingly the West. The era of good feelings was coming to an end. One issue that continued to haunt American politics and expanded the sense of sectionalism was slavery. In 1819, the territory of Missouri applied for statehood. At the time, the U.S. Senate was balanced between 11 quote-unquote slave states and 11 free states. The debate over whether to admit Missouri as a free or slave state reached a boiling point in Congress. Senator Henry Clay, who we'll talk about more in our next lesson, proposed a solution. Missouri would be admitted as a slave state, and Maine would be admitted as a free state. The Missouri Compromise also dealt with how the land from the Louisiana Purchase should be divided between slave and free states. It drew a line west along the southern boundary of Missouri, blocking slavery north of the southern border of Missouri. The Missouri Compromise would not ease tensions for long, as rising sectionalism would increase and would eventually lead America on the path to civil war. But we have a lot to cover before that, which is where we will pick up with our part 2 of the Age of Jackson, with the rise of Andrew Jackson and Jacksonian democracy, trouble with the Native Americans, political bickering, and much more. But before we do, let's review. What word do we use to describe the patriotic feeling of unity that existed after the War of 1812? Nationalism. James Monroe's presidency, in which one party ruled and nationalism united the country, earned this age the nickname the Era of Good Feelings. What do we call the era where mills and factories took hold of the economy? The Industrial Revolution. What is it called when private individuals run the economy, not governments? Capitalism. Eli Whitney invented this new machine to pick the seeds out of cotton. The cotton gin. What effect did the cotton gin have on the South? Well, it increased the demand for slaves, and it also saw the Southern farmers moving westward. More and more Americans in the North started leaving the farms and heading to these in search of jobs. Cities, and, well, you might have said factories. How did most traders get their goods to markets on the East Coast and then off to Europe? Via rivers. What invention drastically changed river and then sea travel? The steamship. To connect rivers to one another, these were developed. Canals. What was Henry Clay's plan called for providing internal improvements such as roads and canals? The American system. To protect American industries, Congress passed these taxes on imports. Tariffs. What is it called when a country defends its own industries against other countries by enacting tariffs? Protectionism. As the northern and southern states developed different economies and lifestyles, it led to what we call sectionalism. Henry Clay negotiated this compromising, allowing a new slave and free state to join the Union. The Missouri Compromise. And that is it. I want to thank you guys for watching. Be sure to subscribe because we're just getting started with the Age of Jackson, where we'll pick up with part 2 next time. And just a reminder, teachers, that this PowerPoint with worksheets, quizzes, lesson plans, smartboard activities, Kahoots, guided notes, flipped class videos, and more are available at Teachers Pay Teachers. Just click the link in the notes below this video or search for Mr. Raymond's Social Studies Academy at Teachers Pay Teachers. Keep up that good work, guys. You're gonna ace that next exam.